let's let the turkeys out. Now, if you remember a couple weeks ago, we had a problem with them roosting in the trees, so I did some pretty substantial trimming of the trees. The good news is, ever since I trimmed those trees and we clipped their wings again, we've at least temporarily broken them of the habit of trying to roost up in the trees at night. So that is a good thing. At least for now, they're all going in pretty well at night into their house where they're nice and secure. Every once in a while, there's one that tries to, roost on the water or on the feeder. I just come out and shoo them in and they go in. But for the most part, it's going really well. One thing we have discovered in just the last week or so, though, is that we actually have 2 males. We thought we had 4 females and a male, but we actually have 3 females and 2 males. And the 2 males, now that they're becoming mature, are starting to fight. So we are going to have to make a decision about which male to keep and which one to get rid of. We'll be doing that really soon. So they are beautiful birds, and we love having them on the homestead. Gosh, it's good to see the ducks do their morning duck run again. We've missed that. I know you guys have too. Well, we made a decision earlier this fall that has come back to really bite us in the butt. And today we want to talk to you about it.
Late last summer, we decided to take some time off of growing, and we decided not to plant a fall garden. We also decided not to plant in the greenhouse and grow in there over this first part of the winter so we could have a rest and so that we could concentrate on the projects that we're going to be doing over this winter.
Yeah, to be honest, after having the 2 gardens this summer and our herb garden and everything else that we had going on, we were just a little burned out on growing things. So we decided, hey, we'll take just a couple months, not a big deal, take just a couple months to kind of take a deep breath before we start up again growing things in the greenhouse, because there's actually quite a bit that will do well in the greenhouse over winter here in southern Missouri.
So part of my shopping over the last couple of months has included buying some organic salad greens from the grocery store, and that decision ended up not being a very good decision at all.
So to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, a couple weeks ago we were doing our normal grocery shopping. We were at Walmart, which was really, there's only 2 grocery stores in our little town. Walmart is the only one that sells really anything organic. So we buy as much as we can there in their organic section. And we bought this. This is an organic spring mix, lettuce mix that we have enjoyed quite a bit. It's actually pretty good, and we like to have a salad at least several times a week with our dinners, and so we've been buying this on a pretty regular basis.
But the last time we bought this very box of lettuce mix, we happened to go into Walmart a couple days later just for other things, and we were walking through the produce section and we realized that there was not a single bag of lettuce in their prepared lettuce section. And looking further, there was no organic lettuce, there was no head lettuce, no romaine lettuce.
Nothing.
The only thing that was there was spinach and kale.
Right.
And we thought, there is no way that this tiny little town has completely bought out Walmart from all kinds of packaged salad mixes and all of the lettuce. And so it got us really worried. We thought, oh my gosh, maybe there is this huge recall of lettuces. We need to find out what is going on with the lettuce.
Right. So we looked around the produce department. We couldn't find, any signs or anything. You would think, where the lettuce used to be, there would be a sign if there was a recall. Right. They'd say something so that people knew to bring things back to the store, but there was nothing there letting us know that there was a recall. So finally, because it was later at night, we tracked someone down who was in charge of like stocking the shelves, and we asked them if they knew anything, and they indeed said that yes, they were instructed to remove anything off the shelf that contained romaine lettuce because there was a recall. Now that's all they knew, and they said, you know, if you purchased any, we can bring it back and get a refund, you know, and all of that, which is great. We still obviously haven't taken it back, which is why we still have it in the refrigerator, but it hasn't even been opened yet. Thankfully, it hadn't been opened because this would have been part of that recall.
Right.
So when we got home that night, I jumped online to see if I could find anything out about a recall, and sure enough, there was a recall. It actually affected 19 states, and there had been like 70-some people that had gotten sick, and 30-some that ended up in the hospital because of E. coli on the lettuce.
When Kevin told me what he had found out online, like all of these emotions came back to me, kind of flashbacks of why we decided originally to take control of our food system and the food that we consume within our family. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, we have to raise our own food. This is why we're raising our own food, and darn it, we made some exceptions to that because we didn't want to grow over the fall and the winter, and now we're in the same position that we were in before we even started growing any of our food.
Right, so we get a lot of people who question why, you know, why go to all the work to grow your own food? Why not just go to the store and buy organic food? And now this is exactly reaffirming for us why we have decided to make that decision. Now, the interesting thing was, while I was researching about the recall of this lettuce, it led me down kind of a hole, you know, when you start looking online and then you go a little further and you go a little further. And I found this website where it listed all of the recalls on food that had happened just in the month of November in the United States. Now, I personally was a little bit angry because I thought that, you know, if there was a recall, you know, there'd be a sign up, at the very least, a sign up at Walmart, or we'd hear something on the news. We hadn't heard anything about anything. So we're very lucky that we didn't eat the lettuce that we had purchased and that we saw about this in time. But, you know, normally I don't read things during these videos, but I just wanted to read to you guys, these are just the recalls on food in the United States just during the month of November 2019. So there was a salad recall mix that affected everything with romaine lettuce. Over 97,000 pounds of lettuce had to be recalled. Nabisco cheese nip crackers were recalled because they found pieces of yellow plastic in them. Cottage cheese was recalled because it was contaminated with plastic and metal. Ground beef, there were 2 separate recalls on ground beef that were laced with salmonella. There was over 2 million pounds of chicken recalled because it was contaminated with metal. There were vegetable recalls, 2 separate vegetable recalls because of listeria. 25,000 pounds of pizza toppings, sausage and pepperoni, because they had listeria. Flour, there was a recall on unbleached all-purpose flour because it had E. coli. Nestle cookie dough was recalled because it had pieces of rubber in it. And there was also 2 recalls of frozen berries, raspberries and a berry mix, because they had hepatitis A in them. Those were all just in the month of November in the United States, which is crazy.
Well, another thing that I want to bring up is that recently in the state of Missouri, there has been an outbreak of hepatitis A.
And it hasn't just been Missouri, it's been kind of the Midwest.
Has it? Well, it got really close to home here. We were notified through the school system that there was a case of hepatitis A at a local restaurant. And then they also told us that there was a case of hepatitis A in one of the childcare workers in the school. So all of these things are exactly why we have taking control of growing our own food. One time we decide to start buying fresh vegetables from the grocery store, we get bit in the butt.
Right. Yeah, because even though we love our home canned vegetables that we grew over the summer and we eat them all winter, like green beans and those things, there's just something about fresh greens and things, even in the winter, that just make your body feel so good. So we really enjoy having fresh things to eat in the winter.
So enough excuses from Living Traditions Homestead. There's no reason why we can't be growing in the winter. And now, because we've been scared all over again, we're gonna do it again.
Right. Yeah, so there are ways that you can have fresh things to eat all winter long, even if you don't have a greenhouse, even if you live someplace where it's really, really cold. I mean, we're fortunate here that our winters are pretty mild, but even if you live in Alaska or Wisconsin where we grew up, you can still grow fresh things in the winter, and we're going to show you the 2 ways that we're going to do it today.
The first thing that we're doing, and we actually started this, was it yesterday or a couple days ago?
About a day and a half ago.
Okay, we're going to be growing sprouts. Now, I have broccoli sprouts in here.
And I have a mix in here, and this is a radish, clover, and fenugreek mix, which is kind of a spicy mix.
Now, sprouts, as well as microgreens, are just a powerhouse of nutrition. All the nutrition from all that big plant is like packed into just the very first parts that emerge from a seed, both as a sprout or if you keep them going a little bit longer into a microgreen.
Now, the really nice thing about sprouts is that, you know, you can have one little bag of seeds like this, and this will be enough to grow sprouts basically all winter. You only use a tablespoon of seeds at a time to make an entire quart jar full of sprouts. And they grow super fast. From the time you first put the seeds in the jar until you're ready to eat them is only about 5 days, which is awesome. You don't have to wait around for a full plant to grow before you can get something healthy.
So if you've never grown sprouts before, we're just gonna quickly show you the basics so that you can get started at home too. Now, the first thing that we need to tell you is that the seeds that you're going to use, they need to be food grade seeds. So
Right.
If you have a packet of seeds, of broccoli seeds that you were gonna plant in the garden, you can't use those because they're not processed in a way to make them safe for you to sprout and then consume.
Right. Seeds that are for sprouting or for eating have been washed so that they no longer contain any manure or anything like that.
Any contaminants.
Right. Where seeds that were supposed to be planted in the ground, they may have things like that on them, and then you could get that in your sprouts, and you could be basically no better off than what we were just talking about with the store, with
Exactly.
E. coli or salmonella or listeria or any of those things. So you need to make sure you're using seeds that were specifically for sprouting.
Yeah, and you can get those on Amazon. A lot of times the local natural food stores will have sprouting seeds.
Right, we actually bought these locally.
Right, but we've also bought them on Amazon.
Right,
so.
and we'll put some links. There's a rooster. We'll put some links. There's a company that I've used in the past that I bought through Amazon. We're not affiliated with them, but they've had good deals. I'll leave a link to some of those in our Amazon shop so you guys can check them out.
Right, so let's show you how easy this is.
Right. And you can do this right in your kitchen or, I mean, anywhere. It doesn't matter. You don't need anything fancy at all.
So you just start with a mason jar. This is a quart-sized mason jar, and you'll want a lid that has holes in it, like some kind of food-grade mesh lid. You can buy these online too, or you can make your own.
Right. Yeah, you need something, don't just poke holes in a normal lid because you need good airflow.
Right.
Otherwise they could mold inside the jar. So something that allows for pretty good airflow.
Right, and so you'll get 1 tablespoon of whatever seeds that you want. We're gonna start a third jar. We're gonna start some mung beans.
Right.
Mung bean sprouts.
So you're gonna just, 1 tablespoon. It really doesn't matter what kind of seeds you're using. Put in a tablespoon of the seeds.
Yeah.
And then all you're going to do for the first day is you're going to cover them with water. You're going to put in, a fair amount of water. You're going to put your lid on, and the first overnight, or the first about 8 or 12 hours, you're just going to leave these sit on the counter just like this.
They're just soaking.
They're just soaking. Now, after that first 8 or 12 hours, I like to start them in the evening, so then the next morning I just dump them and start over. So in the morning, I'll just take this and I'll dump out all of the water.
Through the mesh.
Through the mesh.
That's what the mesh is for.
Right, leave the seeds in there, and then fill it back up, shake it around a little bit, dump that water out, and then from there on out, you'll do exactly what we're doing here. You'll just tip it and put it in a bowl or something so that it stays at an angle so that any excess water can drain out so they don't stay too wet, but they stay moist. then twice a day, so in the morning and in the evening, you'll just take the whole jar, fill it back up with water about halfway, you know, shake it around a little bit, rinse them around, drain that water back out, put it back in the bowl, and you'll just do this until your entire bowl is filled with sprouts. Usually takes 4 or 5 days, depending on what kind you're growing.
Yes. Now, one tip I want to tell you is that when they're resting, to make sure that not all of the seeds and everything are piled down on top of the lid, because that won't allow for good circulation.
Right.
You kind of want them spread out in the jar. And then inside there, you can see that at least half of the jar openings are completely open.
Right, you want that air circulation.
A lot of air circulation so it doesn't mold inside of there.
Right.
But within a few days, these are going to be big enough to eat, and they're so tasty.
Right. Now, there are a few things that you can do as well. A lot of people, especially with like bean sprouts, mung beans, will put them in a dark place until the last day. And they say that it makes them less bitter. I personally don't do that. I just don't put them in the window or something like that. I just put them, you know, in a normal room away from a window, and they do just fine. But you can read all kinds of tips online. There's lots of great videos about how to do this, but it is a great way to get some fresh nutrition in your wintertime diet.
Now, what on earth are you going to do with a jar full of sprouts? Like, what do you eat them on? How do you eat them?
Right.
There are a couple ways that are really easy. The first thing is they're awesome on top of a sandwich. Like if you're having like a turkey sandwich or something like that. They're also good on top of a salad.
Right,
but if
mixed in with a salad.
Yeah, but if you don't have the lettuce, let me tell you, these are good alone as a tiny little salad.
Right.
If you would take like a half a cup of them and mix them with some vinaigrette or something and have them on the side of your plate, even just a half a cup is so nutritious and tasty. I know you'll love them.
Right, yeah, so give it a try and let us know what you think. If you've never tried it before, this is something, again, an easy, fast way to get some good, healthy green things in your winter diet.
Now, that's just one thing that we're going to do. Since we had decided not to grow lettuce or greens or anything in the greenhouse, and we're kind of backtracking and, you know, kicking ourselves, we're actually going to start some in the house and grow in the house during this part of the winter.
Right, and then as soon as it warms up a little bit later in the winter, as we move into spring, we'll be able to move these things outside into the greenhouse, and then they'll do even better. So in our house, we have a hallway that we use for seed starting in the spring before we take everything out to the greenhouse. We have some really nice shelves that we have grow lights on, and there's some really nice windows in that hallway for natural light as well. Now, most of the winter, or really all of the winter until just before spring, those shelves and everything don't get used. They just sit there empty.
Right. So we're going to start some things in the house and grow in the house until it's the best time for us to put them in the greenhouse. If that means we're harvesting in the house, great.
Right.
So we're excited to get some things growing in the house. Now I want to tell you what we're going to be growing. First, we're going to be growing a lettuce mix, and this is our absolute favorite lettuce mix. You've probably heard us talk about it before. It's from Baker Creek. It's called Rocky Top Mix. It's a fabulous, sweet lettuce mix. So we're going to plant some of that.
Right.
We're also going to plant some kale, a variety of kale. It's from Baker Creek also. It's called Nero de Toscano, but it's a lot like dinosaur kale.
Right.
What we have are just some pots, and on the bottom of the pots we have just a standard organic potting soil growing mix.
Right.
And we're going to put a small layer on top of them of seed starting mix. And we're going to do that because the seeds germinate and grow initially much better in something that is really loose, like the seed starting mix. But once they get bigger, they want their roots to develop and grow in something that's a little bit more beefy and substantial.
Right.
Which is why we're doing the potting soil on the bottom.
Right. Plus, the seed starting mix is really just mostly peat moss and vermiculite, and it really doesn't have much nutrition for the plants, where the organic potting soil actually has, you know, compost and things in it that will actually provide some nutrition to the plants. So you don't really want to just grow your plants all the time in a seed starting mix. Now, this is the same mix that we use in the spring when we start plants for the farmers market and things, but those we start in, you know, little bitty plug trays, and then we transplant them to these bigger pots. But because these are just going to be for us, we're just going to do the whole thing in this one, you know, in these pots, so that we don't have to transplant anything.
So the lettuce mix, we're going to pretty much just sprinkle some all around the top of the soil. I'd rather have too many seeds initially and then thin them out if there are too many that germinate than to only put a couple and have them not germinate. These seeds are for this growing year yet, still 2019, and so these are dated to be good through 2019, so I think we're pretty safe.
The other thing is, I was out by the garden earlier today, our actual in-ground garden, and I noticed that some of this lettuce is coming back on its own in the garden, even right now in the winter. So I might go out there and try to put, you know, like a clear, like Tupperware container or something over it in the ground and see if I can make kind of a mini greenhouse over it and see if I can get that stuff to grow right out in the garden, because believe it or not, lettuce is actually pretty frost tolerant.
Now the kale, I just made a little bit of hole in there, put 3 seeds in there and covered it up. They're pretty forgiving. The lettuce, you can just kind of like ruffle up and pat down a little bit and they will be fine.
As long as they're making some contact with the mix, they'll be okay.
Yeah. Now there are 2 herbs I'm also going to start in the house because at the grocery store they're expensive, and also cilantro specifically is one of those herbs that we use a lot, but it's one of those that gets recalled a lot because of E. coli and salmonella. They're not washed very well in the fields, and they're not washed very well before they get into grocery stores. So I'm going to plant 3 pots of cilantro. While it's still cool, they'll keep growing and growing, and they won't bolt very quickly, so that'll be good. And the other thing we're going to be growing is some sweet basil. I miss fresh basil over the winter, and so just having a few pots of them to be able to pick off, you know, 2 or 3 leaves every time I make spaghetti or something like that, I would really enjoy that. So that's what we're going to do. 3 of the cilantro and 3 of the basil. Now both of these, the cilantro and the basil, are also from Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. They're actually our favorite seed company out there.
Look how easy that was. We got this going. All we need to do is water them, either keep them in a nice sunny spot or under the grow lights if we get some cloudy days, and we'll have fresh things to eat. It doesn't have to be a big endeavor in order to get some healthy things in your diet.
Right. Now at this point we need to keep these well moistened so that the seeds will germinate. We'll spray them with a sprayer, like a
handheld little pump sprayer.
Yeah, a little handheld sprayer. And then I will initially cover this with either a plastic lid or a piece of cellophane plastic wrap until they germinate, and then they can be free. And we're keeping our house pretty warm these days because of the wood stove.
Right.
So they'll grow nicely. So you guys, I hope that we have inspired you to do some growing either inside this winter or maybe in a little greenhouse.
Or maybe you are fortunate enough to live somewhere that really doesn't get much of a winter.
Yeah, actually right now is a perfect time to be doing these things in Arizona and Southern California.
Right. Or for those of you who are watching from Australia, hey, it's the perfect time of year. You should be outside.
Exactly. So if you are planning to grow some things over the winter, like us, to get some fresh nourishment, let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear what you guys are doing.
If you're enjoying our videos and aren't a subscriber yet, I sure hope you'll hit the subscribe button. Don't forget that the absolute best way that you can support our channel is by sharing our videos with all of your friends on social media and anyone who would enjoy this type of content. Guys, until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.